Hello, hello. Thank you, thank you. So I had to compress this talk. I'm going to go a little bit fast, but I wanted to share with you, we shipped Xogot, our iOS version of Godot a year ago to the App Store. And here are some of the lessons that we learned and some things that we think Godot could do that would enhance things for everybody. So before I do that, there's a couple of nerd snipe activities that happened this year. One is that a couple of years ago, I introduced SwiftGodot, which is a binding of the Godot API to Swift programmers to give you full access to the API in Godot, just like the Rust one or the C# one. And that was a standard API that is a standard API that we use in the product itself. But this year, a bunch of people said, hey, I want to use this, but I don't care about any of those APIs. I just want to interrupt with the Apple APIs. So I made a new version called SwiftGodot Runtime, which is a tiny 3 megabyte library, so you can just use Apple APIs. And I used that to create this thing called Godot Apple Plugins. There's a bunch of APIs for interacting with iOS applications that are quite old, have not been maintained, or are in bad shape, or do not have full or they don't fully support all of the features that Apple does. In a previous life, my business was to build full high-fidelity bindings for iOS APIs. So I'm not a fan of big abstractions or small APIs. I want to give you the full power of iOS APIs. So this binding that I built with SwiftGodot gives you very in-depth access to all of these Apple platform-specific things. So ARKit goes all to the bottom, in-app purchases, subscriptions, everything, disputes, resolutions, all that stuff. So, anyways, I was nerd sniped into this by Joseph and Aurélien last year, and I made it work on Godot 4.2. So it turns out there's people still stuck on Godot 4.2 shipping on iOS. Anyways, let's get to the meat of this. So we worked on Xogot. We spent about 2.5 years working on this. Now we've had it in the market for a year. It's Godot for iOS, for iPads and iPhones. And here's some statistics about the project so far. We have about 10,000 active users in a month. There's about 200 countries using it. 150 have at least 5 active users in a month. This number is our crash rate. 99.3% of users are crash-free. And we'll talk about that because that's the focus of what I want to share with you today. The other thing that was very surprising is we launched the product for iPads about a year ago, and a lot of people said we want it on an iPhone, and I thought it was a gimmick, and nobody would use an iPhone. It makes no sense to use Godot on an iPhone. I think it's useless, but we ported it anyways to the iPhone. We polished it on the iPhone, and it turns out that today, half of our users are using an iPhone. I don't understand why, but people are doing it. Half of our users choose not to use English as their primary language for this thing. So we translated this into a bunch of languages. And the average time per day that people use of these users that use the product is 36 minutes. It's very interesting because the phone uses about 10 minutes and the iPad is about an hour and a half. So it's very different, the usage pattern of these two. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to show you is that last year, this is a crash rate that we had in Xogot when we shipped on the iPad. At the beginning shows kind of an egg in our face because iOS 26 launched, and we had not tested iOS 26 enough. So we faced a bunch of crashes shortly after iOS 26 was launched, and also that coincided with the iPhone. So we had both crashes coming from the iPhone and crashes coming out from iOS 26. We spent a lot of time just methodically going through every single crash report that Apple gives us and Google gives us. We get telemetry through Google. And what you see at the bottom here is this blue line is our crash rate for Xogot. The dotted line is the crash rate for the average app on the App Store. And it's roughly the same for apps in the graphics category and the developer category. So we're roughly now in the ballpark of other apps in terms of reliability. Now, one thing that I learned in the last few years is that nobody does QA anymore, or nobody that knows what they're doing are doing QA the manual way that people used to do it, where you sat somebody in the computer and they test things and they make sure that they break things, because it doesn't scale, especially with a project of the size of Godot or Xogot. It just doesn't scale, and the amount of value that you get out of manual testing is minimal. So what people do instead is that they ship the software and they ship it in waves. So you have things like betas or previews. They have different names for this. Windows calls it the insider build, I think. But there's different versions of this. And the idea is that you get people that will test the things that matter to them, and they will explore everything about the product, and they will collect the data, right, and fix those issues. So it turns out QA, you can spend a ton of money on that, and manual testing, and get almost no value out of it. I was very surprised when I learned that Microsoft had killed entire QA departments about 12 years ago using this thing. Anyways, but now let's walk through what happens when you have about 1,000 bugs, right? You have 1,000 bugs happening to your users. Well, and only you get to fix 5 of those. And here's what happens. It's very sad. So the first drop that happens, and there's a bunch of, I'll put the links to all the papers that show this, but the biggest problem that you have is you have what is called the awareness gap. So people that notice that something is wrong with the product and decide that they're going to complain on social media, or maybe find a bug reporting saying, or maybe join Discord and say, hey, there's a bug in the product, you get 90% drop rate there. So only 1 out of 10 people would say, you know what, I'm going to go and find out where I can report this bug. Now, that doesn't mean that they're actually going to report it. They might complain, they might file the bug, they might they might find that they can report something on GitHub, and then they're going to have to create a GitHub account, and then they're going to have to fill the 20 fill thing that Godot asks you to do. Right, so we can certainly do that, but we lose a lot of people here. And this is not unique to Godot, it happens to every product. The second thing that you have is a quality gap. Once they go there and they report it, users come and say, doesn't work. And then we start this dialogue. Developers start this dialogue where we go, well, what doesn't work? Well, when I tap it, it crashes. Like, what did you tap, right? So you have this back and forth, until one of them loses it, right? And so you have a really, you have a lot of people that provide really bad information. This is why Godot has this big form with, give us the version, the release number, which OS you did it, at what time of the day, how were you feeling, what is the state of the moon? And you end up with a lot of things that drives everybody insane, like, well, it works on my machine. It's a you problem. It's a skills issue, right? So you lose a lot of people here. The second one is, once you get a good bug report, then you have an overwhelmed team. You have the Godot people, or you have us, and we're like, you know what? We have other things to do. Maybe it's more important. Maybe we're chasing a feature. Maybe we want to do a launch, or maybe there's we've decided we want to do something else, and we have another big drop here, so another 50%. And finally, once we decide we're going to fix the bug, sometimes we fix the bug and we don't really fix it. We just make things worse, or we introduce a separate bug, or we didn't fix the root cause, or all of these things. So we end up with 1,000 actual problems. So our users are getting very frustrated, very angry with 1,000 of these problems every day in and day out. And we only get to fix 1 or 5 of these. This is the reality for most open source projects that work in this way. What the industry does is that they focus on how can we improve collecting the data, and how can we improve the quality from the get-go. So you don't tell users you need to file, you need to create your GitHub account, you need to fill all these forms, you need to actually provide actionable data. So what most of the industry does is that we use crash reporting systems. Right? And the crash reporting system will give you all kinds of things. It will give you statistics. These are the top bugs. These are the things that are trending. These are the problems that you're facing. These screenshots are very blurry from here, but it will tell you, hey, this is happening to 5 users, and it happened in the last 24 hours. It will tell you information about the device. What was the status of the system? Is the user unlocked? Did he load a scene? Did he not load a scene? Version information, the position, the language, all of this information. And also it will provide some breadcrumbs telling you, before the user hit this thing, these are the hints that I have. The user tried to create a scene, or the user tried to run a thing. So we use this information, and all of this is collected automatically on every crash. So in Xogot, what we do is we collect all this data, and what I do every morning, I spot check my daily crashes. I see how things are looking, right? And once a week and once a month, I check the 7-day and the monthly thing, because with the daily, you see a bunch of crashes, and you don't really know what's going on. But we systematically fix this because they accumulate. And the weekly and the monthly, you just want to get some trends, like, hey, is this a bug that is happening to a bunch of people, right? And you get these very nice reports that say, hey, this crash is happening to 50 people, or it's happening every so many hours. So we use this thing. We assign and fix. So this is how we've been getting our crash bug down. But the thing that that we want to do, the thing that I want to pitch the Godot community to do, is that while we can do certainly this for Xogot, and it's our choice to make this, and Apple asks people, do you want to opt in into this? We think that Godot should give an opt-in option to every Godot user to contribute this crash log. So when you use Godot, you actually are getting those crash logs. So what we found is that in almost all of the crashes that we're finding in Xogot, in the Godot code base, those crashes have not been fixed in Godot. We're trying to submit all of our fixes upstream to Godot, but we even have a communications problem with the Godot community, because they say, well, if you don't provide us with a test case, we're not going to even look at this. And it's like, well, we don't have a test case. We have a stack trace, right? We have a stack trace. We have a fix, but we don't have any other way to validate or to give you a sample for you to see how it breaks, right? So this is a cultural shift for a lot of people. Open source people are not inclined to add telemetry to their product, but I think that we're doing a disservice to Godot itself by not adding telemetry and crash telemetry to the product. So I think that for users, you would have people you have all these people getting all these problems, thousands of people, and we would be able to fix this. A little bit like what is that movie called? The one where they fight crime in the future? Minority Report. Did you guys watch that? Getting crash log is a little bit like Minority Report. You fix the crime before it happens, right? Sort of. And for maintainers, the other thing is that the way that it works for me is that sometimes I would submit a fix to Godot, and I understand that the maintainers might not want to take it because they're a little bit risk averse. And I understand that. Sometimes you're like, well, I get their intention, but if we land it, this might regress, and then it's on me, right? What crash reporting does is that it liberates the soul. It liberates the spirit. Because in Xogot, what I do is I land a patch, I run it with real testers, right? And I get to see if it actually causes a problem. And if it doesn't, then I can roll it out to the public. But if it does create a problem, then I can go back and revert. So Godot doesn't have this tool right now. The Godot community does not have this tool. So they essentially have to err on the side of being conservative and not taking some real necessary fixes. So anyways, I think that for contributors and maintainers, it would be a blessing for them to adopt this, and I want to make it happen. And I know it's debatable, and I know a lot of people have very strong emotions about this. I have also very strong emotions, but I'm right too. So anyways, thank you very much.